Hi, everyone. If you can please take your seats, we're going to start in 1 minute. Thank you. Good morning, esteemed guests and colleagues. Welcome to the launch of the Hub of Advanced Policy Innovation for the Environment, or as we call it, HAPIE. My name is Yumna Al-Amri. I work as a policy manager at MENA, where I lead the agriculture, energy, environment, and climate change sectors, where we seek to advance evidence-based policymaking in the sustainability arena through different initiatives. One of them is HAPIE, or perhaps the most significant initiative that we have. I have the pleasure of being your host today. And on behalf of the team, I'd like to welcome you all to the AUC. We're privileged to have such a distinguished group of policymakers, researchers, and development partners with us today, all working towards the shared goal of strengthening climate solutions based on evidence. Before we begin, a quick housekeeping note. This event is being conducted in both English and Arabic. Simultaneous interpretation is available here. Please feel free to collect your headsets if needed. صباح الخير. أهلا بيكم في حفل إطلاق مركز سياسات المبتكرة للبيئة أو حابي. أنا يمنى العمري مديرة سياسات في معمل عبد اللطيف جميل لمكافحة الفقر مكتب الشرق الأوسط وشمال أفريقيا. أنا مبسوطة إن أنا معاكم النهاردة ومعلومة بسيطة الإيفنت هتبقى بالعربي والإنجليش فلو محتاجين headsets عشان الترجمة إحنا في ترجمة فورية available في البوث هنا. To officially open today's event, it's my pleasure to invite Dr. Ahmed El Sayed, Associate Professor at the AUC Sawiris School of Business and Executive Director of JPAL MENA. Dr. Ahmed, the floor is yours.
This is working, right? So, good morning, esteemed guests and colleagues. Welcome to the launch of the Hub of Advanced Policy Innovation for the Environment, HAPIE or HAPIE. It's an honor to be joined by so many distinguished partners and experts, united by a shared commitment to tackling the pressing challenges of development, poverty, and environmental sustainability. At JPAL MENA, we believe that informed policymaking is the foundation for meaningful change. Since 2003, JPAL has been at the forefront of ensuring that policies are guided by rigorous scientific evidence. Originally launched at MIT, JPAL has expanded across 7 global regions to drive impact where it matters most. Here in the Middle East and North Africa, our regional office, which is based at the AUC Sawiris School of Business here at the American University in Cairo, has spent the last 5 years advancing evidence-based policymaking across 8 key sectors in Egypt and beyond. This effort is driven by our deep belief that complex development challenges require equally robust solutions, backed by high-quality research and data-driven insights. That's why JPAL specializes in randomized evaluations, the gold standard for measuring impact. With over 42 ongoing and completed evaluations, we generate insights across employment, social protection, gender, labor markets, and now climate and the environment. Our mission is clear: to inform policies that are not just well-intentioned, but proven to be effective and cost-efficient. Today marks a milestone in our work as we expand into a critical new frontier: environmental sustainability. Under the broader umbrella of climate and environmental policy, HAPIE will be focusing on clean air, water, and climate adaptation for vulnerable communities. The urgency of this work cannot be overstated. The MENA region is warming at twice the global average, placing millions at risk. It's also the most water-stressed region in the world, making sustainable resource management a top priority. To tackle these challenges, JPAL and Community Jameel established the Air and Water Labs, a global initiative with counterparts in India and South Africa, These labs work closely with governments to co-create evidence-based solutions to air and water challenges. HAPIE, or HAPIE, named after the ancient Egyptian god symbolizing the Nile's fertility and prosperity, embodies the spirit of using knowledge to cultivate a better future. This initiative is made possible through the invaluable support of our partners, Community Jameel, for co-founding the Air and Water Labs initiative, including HAPIE with JPAL. For this, I would like to thank Mr. George Richard and his brilliant team of Community Jameel. And also the Sawiris Foundation for Social Development, our co-founding partner of HAPIE. For this, I would like to thank Ms. Layla Hosni and her dedicated team at Sawiris Foundation. HAPIE also builds on our Egypt Impact Lab, which is a strategic initiative in partnership with the Egyptian Ministry of Planning, Economic Development, and International Cooperation. Egypt Impact Lab is embedded in the National Institute for Governance and Sustainable Development, NIGST, and plays a pivotal role in strengthening Egypt's poverty reduction strategies. I would like to express my gratitude to Her Excellency Dr. Rania Al-Mashat for her visionary leadership and continuous support. Although she couldn't join us in person today due to an urgent commitment, her dedication to evidence-based policymaking and sustainable development continues to inspire meaningful progress. I also extend my sincere appreciation to Dr. Sharifa Sharif, the Executive Director of NIGST, for her pivotal role in the success and expansion of this model. Her expertise and guidance have been instrumental in not only establishing it, but also ensuring its sustainability, broadening its impact, and fostering a culture of data-driven decision-making that strengthens policy effectiveness in Egypt. With HAPIE, we are now extending this model to the environmental sector, addressing air, water, and climate resilience to drive forward evidence-based solutions. By learning what works best in Egypt, we aim to inform policy design not only nationally, but across the region and beyond. This launch builds on months of rigorous groundwork. Let me take a moment to highlight key milestones. In September 2023, in September 2023, we hosted the Partnership Development for Climate Adaptation in Arab States, BDCA conference, bridging together over 300 experts to shape the regional climate adaptation agenda ahead of COP28. In December of the same year, HAPIE launched its first request for proposals, funding 3 groundbreaking research projects in El Minya, Beheira, Fayoum, and Asyut. These studies tackle crucial questions, like how does climate information influence farmers' adaptation strategies? What's the impact of carbon credit systems on emissions and smallholder farmer incomes? And how do alternative water filtration methods compared to the traditional methods improve health outcomes? In May 2024, we expanded efforts through capacity building workshops with government agencies, NGOs, and research institutions, enhancing their ability to integrate evidence into environmental policymaking. In November last year, we took HAPIE to the global stage at 2 major policy events. At the World Urban Forum, number 12, we co-hosted a session on innovative partnership models like HAPIE and EIL. And at COP29 in Azerbaijan, we joined a panel on scaling climate resilience alongside our partners from India and Sub-Saharan Africa. But today is not just a reflection on past achievements. It's a call to action. We invite our partners to collaborate with us through 5 key pathways. Evidence sharing, through disseminating insights through publications, policy dialogue, and global research. And also through capacity building, by offering tailored trainings for policymakers and practitioners. Impact evaluation, by identifying and evaluating high-priority policy interventions. Figuring out pathways to policy by supporting the scaling of effective programs and refining policies based on evidence. And finally, last but not least, optimizing data systems and strengthening data-driven decision-making in environment and climate policy. I invite you to be part of our expanding network of distinguished partner institutions and collaborate with our growing team of esteemed researchers and affiliated professors from top academic institutions, whom I thank genuinely. The work ahead is ambitious, but the need is urgent. Together, we have an opportunity to drive meaningful change, leveraging science, policy, and collaboration to create a more sustainable and resilient future. I encourage each of you to connect with us, explore collaboration opportunities, and contribute to shaping solutions that will drive impact at scale. Once again, I extend my warmest welcome to you all, and thank you.
Okay, so HAPIE is a result of a lot of collaborative efforts. And we wouldn't be here today without the support of our main partners and long-time supporters. Their commitment to evidence-based policy and sustainable development has been instrumental in making this initiative a reality. With that, I'd like to invite Ms. Laila Hosni, Executive Director of the Sawiris Foundation for Social Development, to share a few words. Laila, please join me.
Thank you so much. I'm going to speak in Arabic. If anybody needs a translation, please go ahead. صباح الخير عليكم جميعا وشكرا جدا ان انتم موجودين معانا النهارده. احنا بقالنا فتره عايزين نعمل الايفنت ده، فاحنا مبسوطين قوي ان احنا فاينلي بنعمله. اسمحوا لي طبعا في البدايه ارحب بشركائنا الاعزاء ونشكر الجامعه الامريكيه في القاهره انها مستضيفانا النهارده وكل شركائنا طبعا. واحنا بنعتبر النهارده يوم كبير جدا لتتويج سنين من الشغل والتعاون مع مجتمع جميل، المعهد القومي للحوكمه والتنميه المستدامه، معهد عبد اللطيف جميل لمكافحه الفقر في الشرق الاوسط وشمال افريقيا والجامعه الامريكيه بالقاهره. احنا النهارده عشان نطلق مركز السياسات المبتكرة للبيئة، بس أنا بحب أقول حابي لأن ده اسم إحنا بنفخر إن إحنا بنقول عليه، اللي هو امتداد بيكمل شغلنا مع المعمل المصري لقياس الأثر، واللي بنفخر إحنا وشركائنا بتأسيسه داخل المعهد القومي للحوكمة والتنمية المستدامة. هدفنا من المعمل ده كان إنتاج معرفة حقيقية قايمة على أدلة علمية بتساهم في تصميم وتنفيذ سياسات وبرامج تنموية أكتر كفاءة وفاعلية. وكمان حاجة مهمة جدا بالنسبة لنا كمؤسسة ساويرس إن إحنا دعمنا من خلاله زمالات بحثية لباحثين مصريين وعرب في الجامعة الأمريكية، عشان يكون عندنا جيل جديد من الباحثين عنده المهارات والأدوات إنه يقدر يخلق حلول تنموية قوية تفيد مصر وتفيد المنطقة العربية. واسمحوا لي ان انا اشارك معاكم اقتباس من كتاب بور ايكونومكس، افكار اقتصاد الفقراء، للخبير الاقتصادي اباغيد بانجري الحاصل على جائزة نوبل. وهو بيقول لما القواعد اللي احنا بنحطها بيكون ليها تأثير حقيقي لازم نعرف ايه مين اللي بيحطها. بس انا كمان عايزه ازود على كلامه واقول احنا كمان محتاجين نسأل نفسنا ازاي بنحط القواعد دي وعلى اي اساس بنحطها لمين. النهارده مع التحديات البيئيه اللي بتزيد يوم بعد يوم، المسؤوليه بقت اكبر بكتير من اي وقت. التغيير المناخي ده مش حاجه بعيده عننا، ده حاجه قريبه ملموسه بتاثر فينا وبتاثر على اقتصادنا وكمان على الاجيال اللي جايه. ومصر طبعا زي ما كلنا عارفين بتشهد ارتفاع ملحوظ في درجات الحرارة. توقعات بتقول ان هتزيد 2+1 درجة مئوية بحلول نصف القرن، و4.4 درجة مئوية بنهاية القرن. التأثير ده هيكون على كل الأماكن، بس طبعا زي ما كلنا عارفين هيكون على الأماكن في الصعيد بشكل أكتر وأكثر عرضة لموجات حرارة شديدة، وده هيأثر على صحة الناس وبالأكثر على المرضى أو كبار السن أو الأواح أو الحوامل أو اللي عندهم أمراض مزمنة. مش بس كده، الأمطار كمان قلت بنسبة 22% خلال ال30 سنة الأخيرة في مصر، وده بيزود أزمة ندرة المياه وبيأثر بشكل مباشر على الزراعة والإنتاج الغذائي، وده بيأثر بشكل أكبر على الأمن الغذائي، وفي خطر على الموارد وفي خطر علينا كلنا طبعا. وأكتر الناس اللي بتدفع الثمن ده هم الفئات الأضعف أو الأقل حظا، وطبعا فئة كبيرة جدا هي الفلاحين اللي ممكن ما يبقوش قادرين يزرعوا أو يواكبوا مع التغيرات دي. قدام كل ده مش هينفع يكون عندنا ونعتمد على الطرق القديمة والتقليدية، لكن احنا محتاجين سياسات مختلفة، سياسات قائمة على العلم مبنية على التجربة وفهم حقيقي لحلول وتغيير الواقع. وده بالظبط اللي حابي هو اللي بيعمله النهارده. حابي هو اسم نهر النيل، هو شريان حياة مصر، هو مستوحى من حضارتنا المصرية القديمة اللي كانت بتقدس الطبيعة وكمان الموارد الطبيعية، لأنهم كانوا فاهمين أن الحفاظ على البيئة مش رفاهية ولكن شرط أساسي للحياة. النهارده احنا محتاجين نرجع المفهوم ده أو نرجع للفهم ده، لكن بأدوات حديثة زي اللي هنعملها وهنشاركها النهارده في البانل معاكم ونفهم أكتر، وبالتزام حقيقي، وإن احنا نحاول نحول المعرفة لسياسات فعالة. في مؤسسة ساويرس في الحقيقة احنا عندنا هدفين أساسيين، وهو الحد من الفقر متعدد الأبعاد ودعم الأشخاص اللي يقدروا يعملوا تغيير في المجتمع ده. في وسط كل التحديات دي إيماننا إن احنا نقدر نحقق الأهداف دي من خلال العلم والمعرفة، عشان دول هم السلاح الأول اللي نقدر نواجه بيه المشاكل دي وكمان نواجه بيه المستقبل. استثمرنا طبعا مع المعمل المصري لقياس الأثر، والنهاردة بنستثمر في حابي، وده بيعكس رؤية المؤسسة على إن العمل التنموي لازم يكون قائم على أدلة علمية أو على العلم، مش بس مجرد دعم مالي، ولكن دعم مبني على أدلة علمية ومنهجية واضحة عشان نضمن إن كل خطوة ليها تأثير حقيقي. واحنا عارفين كمان، كل الناس اللي موجودة النهاردة عارفة إن بناء على دراسات حقيقية إن الاستثمارات في السياسات اللي بتعتمد على أدلة علمية مش رفاهية، ولكنها استثمار، وأحسن استثمار ممكن يحصل. ده أكده كمان الحاصل على جائزة نوبل دكتور مايكل كريمر لما قال إن كل دولار بيتصرف في سياسات مبنية على أدلة علمية ممكن يحقق عائد اجتماعي يوصل ل 17 دولار. فعشان كده هو ده دورنا في مؤسسة ساويرس، واحنا مش بنمول فقط، ولكن احنا مسؤولين عن إنتاج ونشر المعرفة مع كل شركائنا، وبالذات مع شركائنا في التنمية، عشان نبقى أقدر وأقوى على وأكثر كفاءة. في 2023 احنا تعاوننا مع المعمل المصري لقياس الأثر في إطلاق برنامج الأدلة المحلية في مصر، عشان نقدر نساعد المؤسسات الأهلية اللي هي أصلا شركائنا كمان على الأرض إنها تستخدم المناهج العلمية الحديثة في شغلها، وتتعاون مع الباحثين والاقتصاديين لإنتاج معرفة محلية للمجتمع بشكل جيد. من خلال حابي والمعمل المصري لقياس الأثر، هدفنا هو تحفيز القدرات المحلية في القطاع الحكومي والمجتمع المدني، وعشان ننتج أدلة علمية تسد الفجوات اللي موجودة وتقدم توصيات تقدر تساعد بيها صناع القرار. أنا حابة أشكركم جدا إنكم معانا النهاردة، وعايزة أقول إن إحنا مش بس بنعلن عن حابي، ولكن إحنا بندعوكم كلكم تكونوا شركاء معانا فيه وجزء منه، سواء كنا باحثين إن إحنا نحاول نختبر أفكارنا على أرض الواقع من خلاله، ندعو الحكومة إنها تتبنى قراراتها على أدلة علمية، وبندعو القطاع الخاص إنه يستثمر في حلول بيئية مستدامة، وبندعو المجتمع المدني إنه يستخدم المعرفة كأداة لتغيير حقيقي مش فقط للنقاشات. إحنا في مؤسسة ساويرس مؤمنين إن التنمية مش رفاهية ولكنها ومش خيار، ولكنها قرار ورؤية وعلم وشغل جاد ومبني على أدلة علمية. حابي خطوة في الطريق ده، لكن هو خطوة في الطريق صغيرة ولكن مش النهاية، ومجرد البداية، وتطوير حلول مصرية مبتكرة ممكن يكون لها تأثير كبير مش بس محلي ولكن أيضا إقليمي وعالمي. فحابة أشكركم كلكم إنكم موجودين معانا النهاردة، ودايما بحب أقفل إن أنا أشكر زملائي في مؤسسة ساويرس، لأن من غيرهم ما كانش ممكن يكون في شراكة دي. شكرا جدا.
Thank you so much, Laila. So another key partner in this journey has been Community Jameel, whose dedication to fostering innovation and research has helped drive the vision of JPAL as a whole, the Air and Water Labs in India and South Africa, and HAPIE here in Egypt. With that, I'd like to invite George Richards, Director of Community Jameel, to the floor.
Thank you. Well, President Dalal, Dr. Sharifa, distinguished guests and speakers, ladies and gentlemen, it's a very great honor to be able to address you today. Thank you, President Dalal, for graciously hosting us. It's always a pleasure and an honor to be on campus here at AUC and to be marking another milestone in our long collaboration. And I was actually on campus yesterday to celebrate the 35th anniversary of the Jameel Center for Management Studies in the Tahrir Square campus, which gives you a sense of how long our partnership goes. And another, of course, esteemed partner, Sawiris Foundation. Lovely remarks, Leila. And it's wonderful seeing also the Onsi Sawiris School of Business on campus. So we're old friends. But I'm delighted to be here for the momentous launch of HAPIE, JPAL's Air and Water Lab in Egypt. Our mission at Community Jameel is to ensure scientific research leads to a better quality of life for people here in Egypt and beyond. That's why in 2022, with the Sawiris Foundation and JPAL at AUC, we came together to found the Egypt Impact Lab with our treasured ministerial and Egyptian government partners. And since then, it has been instrumental in informing policy through evidence to improve lives across Egypt. And it's a testament to the success of the Egypt Impact Lab that 3 years later, the same partners have come back again to do it all over again, but this time to expand the focus to tackle challenges related to air and water. HAPIE and its sister, JPAL Air and Water Labs in India and South Africa, epitomize our mission because they ensure that research is directly impacting people by developing evidence-based policies. The need for stronger policies is no more acute than when dealing with the impact of climate change on vulnerable communities, and this is especially true during a time of geopolitical uncertainty in the region and indeed around the world. You know, I like the name Air and Water Lab because it sort of brings home exactly what we're doing, reminds us what is being threatened by pollution, by climate change. In Egypt, I think of the wide open skies in the white desert or in Sahel and the beauty of the waters of the Nile. They are under threat, but it's not just about the environment. Clean air and clean water are essential for our health. I think particularly about children in Egypt. I'm the father of 2 children who are half Egyptian, but when we ensure clean air and clean water can be accessed by children, we ensure that children's brains develop well. We ensure that they stay fit and healthy, that they can go to school, that they can learn, get an education, and that they can seize the opportunities of the future. That's why we are so humbled to be joining with you, with JPAL, with Egyptian government partners, Sawiris Foundation and AUC, and hopefully many more in this room on this important endeavor. And I will close, however, on a historical note. HAPIE, and actually my mother-in-law, who's an Egyptologist, Egyptian Egyptologist, told me that in ancient times it would have been pronounced HAPIE with an ayn. So maybe we should start saying that. HAPIE shares its name with, of course, the god of the Nile, of ancient Egypt. And amongst their many gifts, the ancient Egyptians taught us lots about science. I was at the Grand Egyptian Museum for the first time yesterday and saw a classic example of the extraordinary engineering skill, the extraordinary precision, and extraordinary measurements that the ancient Egyptians did, and found out that the north-south axis of the Great Pyramid of Giza deviates from true north by only 3/60ths of a single degree. And the Nilometers, for thousands of years, allowed Egyptians to measure very precisely the fluctuations of the inundations of the Nile. And so just as Egyptians today are inheritors of this country's ancient past, I think of the HAPIE team, with its team of economists, researchers, government colleagues, its many enumerators in the field, measuring and evaluating programs to ensure policy is informed by evidence. They are the inheritors of Egypt's great and ancient tradition of measurement, precision, and science. Thank you.
Thank you, George. Of course, none of this would be possible without the leadership and commitment of our very own institution, the American University in Cairo, which continues to be a hub for research, education, and innovation in the region. It's now my honor to invite Dr. Ahmed Dalal, President of the American University in Cairo, to deliver his remarks. President Dalal, please join me.
Thank you, Yumna. I like your comments about the builders. We are all builders in one way or the other. We build different things, but absolutely, this is amazing about Egypt. And, you know, the tradition of the impeccable builders that built this country. And there is more to be done. Dr. Sharifa Sharif, Executive Director of the National Institute for Governance and Sustainable Development, our valued and partners and supporters, Mr. George Richards, Director of the Community, Jameel, and Ms. Leila Hosni, Executive Director of the Sawiris Foundation for Social Development. معلش, excuse me, I'll speak in English, بس بعرف أحكي عربي, بس معلش. Distinguished panelists, guests, and colleagues, good morning and welcome to the American University in Cairo. It's really an honor to be able to say a couple of words of welcoming to all of you. You're doing the work. Today, we take a meaningful step towards addressing pressing environmental challenges. I know the word environment is not in fashion nowadays, but it will be in fashion. It has to be in fashion. And we shouldn't be ashamed of doing the work we're doing. So today we take a meaningful step towards addressing pressing environmental challenges through collaboration and research. We believe that effective, viable, and scalable solutions are forged when governments, academia, and communities work together. The launch of the Hub of Advanced Policy Innovation for the Environment, so it's not HAPIE, it's HAPIE. HAPIE, okay, all right. HAPIE, or HAPIE, or as we say it in English, HAPIE. Today embodies this vision. And we are grateful for the support and partnership of the Ministry of Planning, Economic Development and International Cooperation, the Abdul Latif Jameel Poverty Action Lab, JPAL, Community Jameel, and the Sawiris Foundation for Social Development in promoting evidence-based policy making and sustainable development. Her Excellency Dr. Rania Al-Mashat, Minister of Planning, Economic Development and International Cooperation, was keen on attending the launch, this launch. She regrets that she could not be here due to an urgent trip. We fully understand, of course, but we will listen also to a recorded message from Her Excellency shortly. Egypt, like much of the Middle East and North Africa region, faces climate threats that are growing in scale and complexity. Rising temperatures, water scarcity, and pollution threaten livelihoods and ecosystems, while population growth and rapid urbanization further strain limited natural resources. At the same time, we have opportunities to innovate and lead with solutions that can serve as models for the region and beyond. And a key here is to invest in our population. I know the population is growing, and we have to find ways to think of the growth of population as an asset to the country, not a liability. If we fail to do that, we will fail. But we have a large population which needs to be trained so that it becomes an asset for the country and for the region. This is where HAPIE comes in. Through this multi-stakeholder collaboration, HAPIE is positioned to build on the critical work of JPAL MENA at AUC and harness the power of data and research to inform policies that can improve environmental outcomes and enhance the quality of life for millions. The Egyptian government's vision for sustainable development and its ambitious climate action goals drive knowledge translation into action with far-reaching impact. From addressing air pollution to ensuring access to clean water, the research will support our shared goal of building a more sustainable and equitable future. Once again, I thank you for your partnership. Together, we work to enhance the well-being of our communities and of generations to come. We will now listen, if I'm not mistaken, to Her Excellency's Minister Rania Al-Mashat's recorded message. Right?
Dr. Ahmed El Sayed, President of the American University in Cairo, esteemed guests, good morning. I'm honored to be with you today at the American University in Cairo to mark the launch of the Hub for Advanced Policy Innovation for the Environment, HAPIE. Today is not just about launching a new initiative, it is about reaffirming Egypt's commitment to evidence-based policy making, sustainable development, and climate action. At the Ministry of Planning, Economic Development and International Cooperation, we recognize that transformative change must be rooted in data-driven policy making, strategic partnerships, and innovative financing mechanisms. In an era marked by global challenges, economic uncertainty, climate change, and social inequality, our role is to ensure that growth is not just quantitative, but qualitative, inclusive, and sustainable. This vision is reflected in our economic development framework, which is built on three key pillars: formulating data-driven, evidence-based policies to guide strategic decision-making across key sectors, building a future-resilient economy through macroeconomic stability, structural reforms, and a just transition to a green economy, and optimizing resource allocation by mobilizing domestic and international financing through Egypt's integrated national financing framework, which we launched in partnership with the UN. These initiatives are more than policy ambitions. They are tangible steps towards a more climate resilient, economically vibrant, and socially inclusive future. They reflect Egypt's leadership in global climate action, demonstrating how integrated solutions can drive systemic change at the national and regional levels. Egypt has long positioned itself as a leader in regional and global climate action, hosting COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh in 2022 and actively engaging in the international climate agenda demonstrated how developing countries can drive climate-smart policymaking, unlock climate finance, and implement sustainably driven reforms. At COP27, Egypt amplified the voice of the Global South, ensuring that Africa and other developing nations were at the heart of climate negotiations. A major milestone was the establishment of the Loss and Damage Fund, a critical step towards providing financial support to vulnerable countries facing climate-related disasters. At COP29, we continued to push for its operationalization, turning commitments into concrete action. Furthermore, one of the most concrete outcomes of COP27 was the launch of Egypt's country platform for the nexus of water, food, and energy, our NOAFI program, which is a pioneering model that defines climate finance by linking development needs with innovative funding mechanisms. It serves as Egypt's country-led model that translates policy into action by securing high-impact investments aligned with Egypt's NDCs. As we look ahead, I invite you all to engage in and expand efforts, whether by supporting research-driven solutions, piloting innovative projects, or establishing new partnerships that catalyze climate action and sustainable development. Let's work together to ensure that research informs policy, partnerships drive solutions, and sustainable development translates into real measurable progress. The future is ours to shape, and by acting today, we can secure a more resilient, equitable, and sustainable world for generations to come. I would have loved to be with you in person, at my school, the American University in Cairo, and at the launch of what is really a promising initiative that all of us should be part of. Thank you very much.
Special thanks to Her Excellency for her words and constant support. And thank you to all our esteemed speakers for your remarks and for your commitment to climate action. Before we start to the next section of the event, I'd like to invite our partners on the stage for a photo, if I may. Yeah, please. Yeah, same.
AUC President in the middle.
Yeah, and then
We have Ahmed and George. Yes, that's good. That's good. Let's take the photo. Maybe on the result.
yeah, Dr. Sharif. Dr. Sharif.
Oh yes, Mr. Shri. Can we go in between?
Nadine. Yeah.
That's fine.
Okay.
Great.
Let's take a photo. Yeah. Okay. Now it's time for the second half of our event. And to open it, we're fortunate to hear a special message from Dr. Esther Duflo, Nobel laureate and director of JPAL. Let's turn our attention to the screen.
Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you today, even from the virtually, to discuss one of the defining challenges of our time, climate change. Now, we often talk about climate change in broad global terms, but in reality, its effects are unevenly distributed. Some nations, some communities, and some individuals bear a disproportionate burden, not because of their own actions, but because of the inactions of others. Nowhere is this injustice more evident than in the Middle East and North Africa, a region that is already hot to start with. The consequences are already severe. Water scarcity, extreme heat, declining agricultural productivity are threat to economic stability and public health. For you all in the room today, and for policymakers around the world, the question is no longer whether to act, but how to act effectively, equitably, and at scale. And here, we must be honest with ourselves. Too many climate policies are based on intuition rather than evidence. That must change. We know from decades of research that even well-intended policies can fail when they are based on assumptions rather than data. For example, subsidies for clean energy often end up benefiting wealthier households who do not need the support and do not always change their energy consumption. Drought relief funds sometimes fail to reach farmers due to bureaucratic inefficiency. And water conservation projects frequently overlook behavioral barriers, limiting their impacts. The cost of these poorly designed policies is not just inefficiency, it is human suffering. The stakes are high. Without intervention, climate change will deepen inequality, accelerate poverty, destabilize economies and political systems. Yet, climate action remains underfunded and often untested. This is why JPAL, in collaboration with community Jameel, established the Air and Water Labs, global networks around the world of labs embedded in government in Egypt, in India, in South Africa, to test climate solutions before they're scaled. And now together we are marking the launch of the Hub of Advanced Policy Innovations for the Environment. Aptly named HAPIE, this is more than just an initiative. It's a commitment to precision, accountability, and scientific rigor. HAPIE will stand at the forefront of this effort, bringing together researchers, policymakers, practitioners, to build a more resilient future for MENA and beyond. Because knowledge enough is powerless without true commitment and collaboration, we encourage a drive for great change. I hope today signals a new chapter in climate policies for Egypt and the MENA region as a whole, where decisions are shaped by data, impact is measured not by intention, but by tangible results. Thank you and congratulations on this momentous occasion.
Building on Dr. Duflo's insights, we now move into our panel discussion, From Evidence to Impact, Tackling Climate Challenges in Egypt. I'd like to ask our panelists to join us on the stage. As we begin our discussion, moderating the session is Dr. Kyle Emmerich, JPAL affiliate and associate professor of economics at Tufts University, and our very own scientific director of HAPIE.
Welcome everybody to this panel where we have a great set of speakers. Just to introduce myself, my name's Kyle Emmerich. My day job is I'm an academic. So I'm based at Tufts University in the United States. I'm an associate professor in the Department of Economics. What brings me here is I'm the scientific advisor for the HAPIE lab. I'll go with the HAPIE pronunciation because I'd rather not embarrass myself here by trying to pronounce it the proper way. Joining me on the panel, we have 5 wonderful people that I'd like to start by introducing one by one. We have Councillor Tagareed El Gaweli, who is the Director of Environment Affairs and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Egypt. Mrs. Clémence Vidal de la Blache, who's a Country Director for the French Agency for Development in Egypt. Mr. Laurent Debro, who's the Program Leader for Sustainability and Development at the World Bank here. Next we have Dr. Mohamed Bayoumi, who's an environmental specialist at the UNDP, and then finally Mr. Sharif El Dawani, who's the co-founder and managing director of MGM Climate Business Developers. So I'd just like to start by saying that rigorous scientific research, leveraging data to inform decision-making and fostering cross-sector collaboration can lay the groundwork for actionable strategies and innovative solutions to build a resilient and sustainable environmental future for Egypt. Drawing on JPAL's previous studies that have informed scalable national projects with the potential to influence climate initiatives, this approach underscores the critical role of translating environmental policies and innovations into very tangible, real-world impacts. And we want to do this to effectively address climate change, adaptation, and air and water issues. So I'd like to start by just giving each panelist a couple of minutes. Each of you brings a very unique perspective from either government, international organizations, or the private sector. And so as we begin, I'd like to just invite each of you to briefly, in say 2 minutes or so, reflect on the role of evidence and research in the work of your organizations. And I'd like to just do what's very easy and proceed down this way. We'll randomize a little bit later, but we're going to go non-randomly first.
Sure. Thank you very much. Very happy, very honored to be here. So just to reintroduce AFD, AFD is the French Bilateral Development Bank. I'm not sure, George, that we can say we are close friends with everyone in the room, but we do have a close relationship with JPAL, with the Sawiris Foundation, including through the Fund for Innovation in Development, FID, which was created in 2021, which is chaired by Dr. Duflo, hosted by AFD. So I'm very happy to expand on FID and our support to HAPIE's cousin in South Africa after the panel, if you have any questions. So to go back to your points regarding the role of evidence and research, I think AFD as a DFI has always been very fond of data. I think I see some of our partners in the room. I think it's one of the difficulties also of working with us. Very time and cost-heavy requirements in terms of feasibility studies, particularly for infrastructure financing. I think, and this is the but, as we are moving, I think what is forcing us to rethink our relationship with data, with evidence, with research, is a need to move towards more impact investments. I think that's not just a catchphrase, I think that's an existential question for AFD, to integrate impact throughout our investment cycle, for 3 reasons. One, it's a financial requirement. AFD emitted its first sustainable bond as a financial institution 10 years ago. And so our impact investors are expecting evidence-based proof of alignment. I think it's also an extra financial, so financial requirement, extra financial regulatory requirement. I don't know if some of you are familiar with the CSRD from the European Union, Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive. We are regulated as a European bank, and we need now to report on impact. And the last, and I'll end there, most importantly, I think, is an accountability requirement. At a time when overseas development assistance, where financial aid architecture, I would say even solidarity, is being challenged a little bit the world over, including in France, we have to demonstrate relevance, value for money, and impact. So very, very important questions for an institution like AFD.
Thank you so much. Let's move to Councillor Tagareed.
Good afternoon. I'm very delighted to be here to participate at the launch event of HAPIE, a very appreciated initiative that we value within the system of the government, because the issues it tackles are very vital for the climate policies of Egypt. Back to your question, I think data is fundamental in designing informed climate policies, especially for a country like Egypt, and also in addressing the climate challenges posed by the climate policies of our partners. Since I will tackle maybe the CPAM issues and the carbon border taxes, I will come to this point later on, but I would like to emphasize that the government of Egypt, and I see my colleagues from the Ministry of Environment here in the event, has taken significant steps to design MRV system, because we acknowledge the value of having a robust MRV system in Egypt in every climatic issues, including water, trade issues, adaptation, mitigation policies as well. So this is an area that the government is taking significant steps to anchor within the system itself, and also an area for cooperation with our partners, whom I'm very glad to participate at the panel with. So data is crucial for designing our policies, and also crucial to address the policies of the other side. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Laurent.
Thank you very much. It's a real honor to be at this prestigious campus of the American University of Cairo today to celebrate the launch of this HAPIE, and congratulations to JPAL for a beautiful acronym. So in response to your question, Dr. Kyle, let me emphasize that data and knowledge are at the core of the bank's mission. So the reasoning is that development challenges that countries like Egypt are facing are so complex that financing alone will not make it. Financing is good, but it needs to be accompanied and underpinned by solid analytics and advisory and policy advice. And policy advice must be grounded on evidence. Therefore, for us at the World Bank as a development institution, it is absolutely essential that we have capacity and systems to collect, to process, and to disseminate data globally. This is why, less than a year ago, under the leadership of our new president, the World Bank has adopted a new Knowledge Compact. The Knowledge Compact is a constellation of data-focused initiatives. I will mention open data, Data 360, the World Bank Academy, and artificial intelligence for development. All these initiatives are focused to put data and knowledge at the center of our dialogue with government. Recently, we also created a whole new department called Digital to accompany our client countries in the digital transformation. So all this to say that more than ever, data and knowledge are at the core of our dialogue with governments to achieve impact at scale. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. It's always wonderful to be in a university campus. The atmosphere of being an academic institution is always makes me happy. Which is, I also like the name, by the way, very much, HAPIE Lab. It's a fantastic, upbeat name for an initiative that badly needed, by the way. I think the proof of the point of evidence, importance of evidence in climate action is already, actually, AUC is already working on it. I saw some work in the life science department of the engineering school. I think it's in the engineering school. On mangroves in the Red Sea. They have been doing some outstanding research there, testing different species of mangroves, funded by HSBC grant. They've been working for 2 years, and they tested a number of species in a number of locations around the country, in Sinai, in Ras Mohammed, in Guna, and then south in Marsa Alam and further south. And they had some successes. Actually, the scientific work that has been done there is exemplary for the kind of work that HAPIE should be embracing. And another area, I mean, unfortunately, it's a bit, it's a challenge. The results are challenging, but it's good to know what is possible and what's not possible. And the survival rate of the mangroves that were tested over there is still low, and they're still going for a second round to improve the survival rate. Fantastic work they're doing. Maybe a new project that HAPIE could embrace. I did not introduce what do we do. I'm in the private sector. My company works with the Egyptian companies that are committed to emission reduction to access finance from carbon markets to improve their the viability of the financial viability of their investments in emission reduction. We have a dream one day, maybe we can find a business case for adaptation projects, but for the moment, we're focused on mitigation projects by emission reductions. A lot is going on in the energy efficiency field, renewable energy, but not enough opportunities are there, but not enough access to nature-based solutions, which is quite important for the future of the climate. And Egypt has, one is obviously the examples I just gave, mangroves, and then there's another one which I think needs to be researched, is seagrass in the Red Sea. That's huge. That's quite enormous size. Unlike the mangrove, it's actually multiples of it. And then agriculture, of course, farming. I think the situation in Egypt in this area requires that we do some research on how to improve the farming practices and use technology in farming, and really there's a big journey to make, because the challenges are water scarcity is huge, land is also becoming a problem. So the idea of using technology in farming, there's something called agbotics, which is an American technology solution that has potential here. Maybe there should be some research to discover how viable this technology is, or alternatives to it, and so on. So in that sense, I think I answer your question, the importance of research to establish ways and solutions of addressing mitigation in the Egyptian context.
Thank you. Go ahead, Dr. Bayoumi.
It's my pleasure to be with you here today, and thank you for inviting UNDP to be part of this important and prestigious panel. I'm here on behalf of the UNDP resident representative, Mr. Alessandro Fracassetti, who was not able to make it due to engagement with the mission visiting Egypt now from headquarters. So cop with me, I'm the climate change team leader in the UNDP Egypt, so I'm going to answer the question from the perspective of climate change. In designing our projects, actually, research play a very important role in this respect. We're trying to induce an impact and achieving SDGs and achieving the targets related to climate change mitigation and adaptation. And this has to be based on an evidence-based research. Obviously, the tracks of research differs between climate change mitigation and adaptation. And maybe I can expand more through the discussion. For mitigation, we are trying to capitalize on the advancement that had happened in technology related to renewable energy and energy efficiency, identify the technologies that can be technically and financially viable to Egypt and have social acceptability in order to induce the energy transition and the impact. And we have some success stories in this respect in Egypt. There are some colleagues in the room who knows about the promotion of energy efficient lighting systems, LED technology, and how the market transformation had happened in Egypt in a very smooth and very fast manner in Egypt, inducing large impact on electricity savings. On adaptation, the story is different because we don't have mature technologies for adaptation, and we have to do this by ourselves, which consumes time and effort in order to find the suitable techniques and approaches that can be suitable to the conditions in Egypt. it adds an additional burden, but again, research is important before you go for upscaling and replication of these technologies. Apart from these two activities, we have to do the research. We're probably the largest supporter to the government of Egypt in preparing the climate change reports that are submitted to the UNFCCC. And it's all about research about the opportunities for climate change mitigation, vulnerability assessments of the different sectors to climate change and adaptation actions. It's all about research, and definitely this is an informed research that can lead to implementation and actions on the ground afterwards.
Thank you very much, and thanks to the panelists for those really nice introductory remarks. Now we've got a couple of tough questions for each panelist to answer as an opportunity to tell us more about their organizations and opportunities for evidence-based policy. I'm going to start with Ms. Clémence. The AFD has been engaging in water and agricultural projects in Egypt for the past several years, and so I've got a couple of questions for you in that space. And I'm going to start with the first one, which is how does AFD incorporate data and evidence into the design and implementation of these environmental projects?
Thank you. I think, as I mentioned in my introduction, I think we've done it relatively well for our environmental infrastructure portfolio. We've been present in Egypt for 15 years. We've invested roughly 4 billion euros in the country. I'll give two examples taken from our energy interventions. When we finance, over the past 10 years, over 600 megawatts of renewable energy assets. It's a big focus of the government, a shared priority. And whether it's solar or wind, before we invest, we require and often we finance extremely rigorous resource assessment studies. And so just to give you concrete examples of what I mean, we inaugurated wind plants in the Gulf of Suez area in April. And the feasibility studies that went into this investment included multiple years of weather measurements beforehand, cross-referenced with airport data to have a really robust, reliable database to confirm the opportunity of the investments, but also to design, for example, the location of each turbine. So that's an example of data, informing the investment decision. At a policy level, we've also supported Egyptian decision makers to develop proprietary tools to inform decision making. So again, in the energy space, we worked with the Ministry of Electricity and Renewable Energy, ETC, on an energy demand forecast model. And the team, it's operational, the team is trained, they can update it on a quarterly basis to have input population growth, new regulation, new energy assets, energy tariff. So that's allowing, it's a real compass for informed decision-making on public investment, investing in the right infrastructure at the right time. And then finally, these kind of projects, whether it's infrastructure or policy, we have a rigorous, and we share, with peers like the World Bank, rigorous what we call ex post evaluation, meaning third-party evaluation policy, whose results are published. Now, having said that, I think there's a couple of issues with what I've just described, which is a little bit the foundation. One, I won't go into them, but Dr. Ahmed, in his remarks, was mentioning questions around data system. Is the data produced proprietary? Does it belong to the consultant or to the public owners? Is it made accessible to researchers? I think there's lots of questions around that. But I would say maybe even more importantly, I think it's not fit for purpose for our climate mandates, and particularly for adaptation projects. And so I think that the case has been made very forcefully by some of the previous speakers. Dr. Bayoumi, you were referring to that. I think when you're working on adaptation, when you have to factor in multiple climate scenarios, complex decision trees, risk of maladaptation, including on a regional scale, this type of evidence and data, or that approach, which is very project and investment based, is not sufficient. And so we've, to finish on that example, I think we're increasingly taking that into account. We've started working with the European Union in 2017 on a new research action program called Adaptation. And the triptych really here is understand first, then plan, then invest. And so how do we inform decision-making for adaptation? There's a couple of knowledge products that have started coming out of this work. I'll just give a shout out to a policy brief released in November on transboundary climate risk in the MENA region. It's public, go check it out. And finish by saying that over the next 2 years, the adaptation team for the Mediterranean region will focus on adaptation of health and social protection systems, and the water sector, given the evidence, and again, it was highlighted by previous speakers. I see a lot of convergence there and potential areas of collaboration with the JPAL and the HAPIE teams.
Thank you so much for that. I'd like to then, if I could, pose the second question, which is based on AFD's global experience. What best practices in data generation and evidence-based policymaking could be adapted to the Egyptian context through HAPIE?
So Dr. Ahmed mentioned in his opening remarks the gold standard of impact evaluation, and I'm sure we'll hear a lot about it this morning. We're getting on board. Again, I give a shout out to one of our knowledge products that was published a few months back on women economic empowerment in North Africa, based on an randomized impact evaluation. It's available in Arabic and English. Again, very interesting findings on what are the real levers that can encourage, what are the most impactful levers encouraging women workforce participation. But given that I think a lot of other speakers will address that, I wanted to use this platform maybe to pitch to the HAPIE team another type of data generation and evidence that AFD has been working on recently, but with a few interesting results already, which is impact assessment involving satellite images and other Earth observation tools. We've had 2 programs recently evaluated, one in the Congo Basin area, one in Madagascar. We think it's a very powerful tool, relevant for climate, agriculture, biodiversity, environment, which are, I think, all at the heart of the HAPIE mandates. I think in this field particularly, we know the importance of working with partners. And so I just wanted very quickly to give 3 examples. We've supported FAO and IFAD. I look at you, Dr. Bayoumi, as a representative of the UN family, on the ABC map, which uses ESA and NASA satellite images, which allows projects from the inception all the way to the monitoring, so throughout kind of the life cycle of a project, to test the project's both risks and impacts from a biodiversity, climate change, and land degradation perspective. So this, again, public tool, ABC map. Second one is the Geo for Impact partnership that we have with KfW, GIZ, and ERD, which is a French research institution. It's going to be launched, or there's going to be an upcoming event end of May with the European Space Agency, but also the recently established African Space Agency. There's a call for papers that has just been launched this week. So again, maybe an opportunity of research, including across departments at AUC. And the last example is that AFD is working on a publication, a collective book on geospatial impact evaluation in practice, with a lot of insights brought from different fields, including, obviously grappling with the contribution of AI, machine, deep learning for these kind of impact assessments, and a series of use cases, again, I think at the heart of HAPIE's mandates. So I think maybe that's what I would kind of nudge the HAPIE team to look at as well.
Thank you so much. That one really hits home, because I was at a conference at the College of William Mary just maybe a month ago on items number 2 and 3 there. And so with projects in agriculture and the environment bring a very unique opportunity to use remote sensing to measure outcomes. Traditionally, when we do these impact evaluations, we rely on surveys with people, and those are still a very fundamental input into the process, but some data for the earth and environment can be remotely sensed and can be done much cheaper Sometimes, not always, but sometimes. And when it can, that allows us to do impact evaluations that are often much more broad and can tell us a lot more. And so I'm super excited to hear that. I'm going to now do that randomization that I promised and skip one down and go to Mr. Laurent. Shifting to air and air quality and emissions topics now, the bank has been actively involved in addressing climate issues in Cairo through various initiatives that incorporate data collection. So I have a couple questions for you, and I'm going to throw them both at you and allow you to answer them as you best see fit. So the first question is how does the bank collaborate with the Egyptian government to address critical air quality challenges, while at the same time shaping policies and programs to drive measurable environmental improvements? And then the second question is what strategies can be employed to ensure that climate data is not only generated, but it's also effectively utilized. So generated and effectively utilized by policymakers, businesses, and local governments in Egypt.
Well, thank you very much for that series of questions. Let me start with air quality, and then we'll move to climate, although recognizing that both are closely interconnected. So with air quality, it's not a secret for anyone. Air quality in Cairo is among the lowest in the world, large cities. The cost of air pollution is astonishing. I found in a report a number of up to 40,000 lives lost annually because of air or as a consequence of air pollution, and the economic cost of it reaching up to 3% of GDP, which in Turkey represents about $10 billion. So recognizing that this is a major and complex challenge, the government of Egypt a few years ago requested and started preparing a project with the World Bank. It's called the Greater Cairo Air Pollution Management and Climate Change Project, financed with a $200 million loan from IBRD. And we know the main sources of air pollution in Greater Cairo, like in many other places, is about transport, industries, agriculture, in the case of Greater Cairo, and waste burning. So the Greater Cairo project, as we call it in short, is implemented by the Ministry of Environment with Ministry of Local Development and multiple governorates surrounding the city of Cairo. So that project is addressing 2 out of the 4 sources of pollution. On waste burning, the project will support a major modernization of the 10th of Ramadan landfill using state-of-the-art technologies. At the 10th of Ramadan landfill, by the end of the project, all waste will be sorted, and 75% of it will be either recycled or used for generating fuel or compost. So this is a major progress compared to the old practices of dump sites. The second source of pollution which the project will be addressing is transport, and the project will be helping Greater Cairo to acquire e-buses, electric buses, up to a number of 100 buses, and it's a start. Hopefully the government will gradually move towards turning the entire bus fleet of Cairo to electrics. So this is very important, and it will achieve an important impact. But there are 2 activities in this project that are probably as important and less expensive. I'm thinking of the project creating an air quality forecasting and monitoring system, and also a whole set of activities aimed at building capacity and influencing behavioral change. That second activity actually is being implemented in partnership with JPAL. So big thank you and congratulations to JPAL for that partnership. And the hope is that these 2 activities, being more on the knowledge and the soft side, will have a multiplier effect and will help scale up the impact of the other two components, which are more expensive. So we believe that in this case, the soft activities can have that scaling up effect and achieve impact at the national scale. So that's a good example of how knowledge is used to leverage financing and investment. Now coming to climate, in my introductory word, I mentioned the new knowledge bank. One element of that initiative is also to focus our analytical work on fewer but more impactful reports and products. One of those core analytics is called the Country Climate and Development Report, CCDR in acronym. The CCDR for Egypt was published 2 years ago, and it shows that it is absolutely essential, as previous colleagues have mentioned today, it is absolutely essential for Egypt to focus on climate adaptation. The CCDR looks at the interplay between government priorities and climate impacts. And it shows that if government of Egypt wants to create jobs, it needs to look at the agriculture and agri-food value chains, because this is where 30 or 35% of jobs are created. And if you look at agriculture, you need to look at water, because in Egypt, as you know better than me, there is almost zero rain-fed agriculture. It entirely depends on irrigation and water. And climate projections show that today, Egypt is close to the level of absolute water scarcity, with 560 cubic meters of fresh water available per capita. But by 2030, Egypt will fall below that level because of the demographic growth and water scarcity. So in short, the story is that if you don't invest in water and irrigation, there will be less agricultural production and less jobs. It's almost impossible for Egypt to achieve the policy objective of jobs creation without investing in water and agriculture. Another of those core analytics that we will be focusing on more and more moving forward is called Country Environmental Analysis. And again, a very nice CEA was prepared for Egypt about 2 years ago. It focuses on the blue economy and on circular economy. On blue economy, the case is obvious. The tourism industry is essential for Egypt, and you can only sustain the tourism industry by investing and protecting in your marine ecosystems. On circular economy, it's about waste management. I talked about it in the context of the Greater Cairo project, but it's also a matter of trade and exports. We know well that the European Union is putting in place the Green Deal, which includes a series of measures, including the CBAM, Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism. And the CBAM can be seen either as a threat or an opportunity for countries like Egypt. 25% of Egypt exports go to EU, therefore CBAM can be seen as one more tariff. Or if Egypt is able to decarbonize quicker in key value chains, quicker than competitor countries, CBAM can also be seen as an opportunity to actually increase access to premium European markets. So this is where in-depth, evidence-based analysis can help identify the value chains, be it steel, cement, aluminum, or others, where there is an opportunity to decarbonize quicker and access and increase access to the European markets. In terms of good analytics influencing policies, I will finish with mentioning the work that we are doing together with other partners and with government on establishing an MRV, monitoring, reporting, and verification system for carbon emission. It's a relatively complex work requiring a lot of analytics, but that is also extremely important for Egypt to maintain its commitments towards the international community on climate change and transparency, and hopefully in the future establishing an emission trading systems that would enable Egypt to capture the cost of trade measures like CBAM locally instead of paying them to a neighboring country. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Laurent. So that was actually a wonderful transition because Councillor Tiger Reid, as a policymaker, has actually been at the forefront of the discussions on CBAM exactly. So that gives me the opportunity to jump directly to the question that we have for you, which is what mechanisms should be implemented to ensure that Egypt is well positioned under CBAM regulations, while at the same time providing companies and projects with data that drive meaningful environmental and social benefits. And if in your response you could also speak a little bit about how data-driven approaches such as the one of HAPIE can enhance Egypt's climate mitigation strategies.
Thank you so much. Actually, the transition is very good as well and paving the ground for me to start immediately. Actually, the government of Egypt perceives CBAM as a threat, a challenge. And Egypt is not alone as a key developing country in this respect. I think all developing countries perceive CBAM the same. Because it is a coercive measure, it is not in line with Paris Agreement, neither with the WTO rules. And also, it pretty much challenged the very concept of the just transition for developing countries. For a firm to be able to decarbonize in a developing country that was not responsible for the emissions, the accumulated emissions in the atmosphere, it needs time, it needs resources, it needs a just space to transit, actually. So these policies deprive the transition, the smooth transition from the resources that enables them to lower their carbon footprint and advance their technologies. And mentioning data, I will state later findings of a very important empirical studies that has been undertaken in the Egyptian market in this respect. So the CBAM is a challenge for Egypt, and in terms of data as well, we don't see evidence that it fits for purpose. It didn't prevent the carbon leakage in the past. I know the World Bank, amongst others, starting to say as the developed countries progressing in implementing and widening the scope of this mechanism, it will prevent carbon leakage, but as a developing country and based on the empirical evidence available right now, it doesn't tackle carbon leakage. So it is harmful and it is challenging for the Egyptian economy in very strategic sectors, as my colleagues stated, in terms of exports, in terms of employment and poverty reduction as well, because these sectors in Egypt, they are intensive labor industries as well. And Egypt has invested a lot in building plants, firms, and even the business, the private sector invested a lot in this respect. And I will give a few interesting examples here. In the steel sector, for example, I think the steel in Egypt is amongst the lowest in terms of carbon footprint. But when we started to report on the carbon footprint to the CBAM registry, we find out even there is some kind of discrimination against the sectors in favor of other sectors where Egypt is disadvantaged because CBAM is designed to favor and to take into consideration the conditions of the industries in the EU rather than being all the time kind of fair and just. I'm setting the challenges and perception just to give a context how the government and even the private sector perceive this very eminent challenge for the economy and sustainable development goals in Egypt, because The EU is a key trade partner of Egypt. I have been involved in Egypt-EU association agreement negotiations for many years. I have seen the progress of trade between Egypt and EU, and I've seen the benefits Egypt gains, the private sector in particular, and also the EU. So at this point, when key sectors see the erosion of their competitiveness and the inability to keep their EU share market, and afterward to see kind of fragmentation of trade and the fragmentation within the production process of the same product, it is quite challenging and difficult to adapt to without a long and just transition. The policies that Egypt, the government of Egypt tried to implement and try to design to be able to alleviate and to lessen the impact of the CPAMs are diverse. Starting with data, with the MRV system, we see it is vital, and also when it comes to data, we see that the companies in Egypt have difficulty in measuring their carbon footprint. So we started to be alert in this respect, and we're having government institutions and government tools in this respect, trying to cooperate with the EU platforms as well in order to see how they can support the companies to measure their carbon footprint. The other point is, I mean, Egypt is not a key fossil fuel producer, so it has a stake in the transition. It has a stake in expanding the share of renewables in its energy mix, and you're all aware of the NDC's renewable target in this respect. So this is the starting point, but the challenge is how we transit. The other policy that we are trying to develop is the production of hydrogen. Hydrogen is the main, if not the only fuel that can support such heavy emission industries to decarbonize and to transit. So Egypt has a very ambitious policies in producing hydrogen, but we have to recognize that hydrogen is still a nascent technology, and it requires huge investment at the same time. So therefore, again, it proves our point that it needs time, it needs support. The other, I mean, I don't like to get much into the details of the government policies, but I will only mention that there is a national committee chaired by the Deputy Prime Minister to tackle the issue of CPAM, because we're expecting CPAMs, given that the key trade powers are competing and when it comes to their trade policies, be it with subsidies or carbon taxes, and again, the developing countries, including Egypt, are paying a heavy price in this respect. So this committee is designing an overall concerted policies for each sector to decarbonize at a space that the government can support and the private sector can accept as well. I would like just to quickly comment on the issue of the ETS in Egypt and the issue of imposing a carbon tax in Egypt. This idea is completely rejected by the business community in Egypt. And as a government, we totally understand and support this, because we see the environment they are working in right now, they are operating in. It is very challenging in terms of geopolitical conflict, and also the ability of a country like Egypt to escort and support this firms, this sector to decarbonize. Recently, I have seen the competitiveness compass of the EU. I know some of you have read the very famous communication of the European Commission, and I have seen that the Commission is planning even to increase its support to its industries, the heavy emission industries, to decarbonize. So they escorted these sectors for many years to decarbonize. And also, if we look at the details of the EU ETS, we will find many free allowances here and there to be able to transit their industries in a way that is favorable for the society. But and we're expecting more, and that would complicate the scene for these sectors in Egypt further, because it is eroding their competitiveness again and again. The last policy intervention, and afterward I would stop waiting for other questions, is the carbon market. Actually, Egypt has launched a regulated carbon market, a voluntary carbon market, and I totally understand. But this is the first step, and we count on our partners to support us in, of course, building the capacities of this market and also accepting the credits of this market. We understand this is a voluntary market. CBAM would accept only compliance credits, but this is the issue that the EU has to address with its partners, given that the two sides are very keen to continue the partnership, to continue the partnership between the private sectors on the two sides. We don't like to see a fragmentation of industries, of products in Egypt. This is very harmful for both sides, for the EU and for Egypt as well. We are looking north all the time. We have achieved strides in this respect in integrating the two business communities, the industries, the steel industry. When you look at the steel industry in Egypt and you see how much they import from the EU and how much they export from the EU, you would find the same number. So it is pretty much integration. But if you look at the findings of the empirical research in this respect, you would find the firms preferring as the best strategy is to diversify their export markets. And this is where the danger lies, because to go to other markets means that they will continue producing as they do right now. There will be fragmentation, and there will be, disintegration. So this is the problem that we are trying to avoid. I'll stop here. I talked much. Thank you so much.
No, that was wonderful. Try to get rid of that echo. That brings us to the private sector and Mr. Sharif, in sort of making this transition to the private sector, given the critical role you've played in mobilizing Egypt's voluntary carbon market. I have a couple questions for you in that space. And I'm just going to start with the first one. These markets have certainly become more popular. And so I'd just like to ask, how can the Egyptian market effectively incentivize businesses and communities in Egypt to adopt sustainable practices and climate-smart technologies?
Excuse me, the interventions are so stimulating, I don't know where to start. There's so many important ideas. The satellite technology, I just have to comment on that because my mind has been going all over the place listening to the interventions here. And it's really quite fascinating. The MRV, the CBAM works that you just mentioned, all of these are so important for Egypt. And I can link, I would like to pick up on your point, Councillor, on linking the voluntary carbon market, somehow finding a way to allow, at least as a transitional way, to allow the use of voluntary carbon credits to offset CBAM requirements. And that because we've done some work with, actually we're doing two projects, one in fertilizer. I'm not allowed to mention the names of the companies, unfortunately, because I confidential, but one in fertilizer and one in ceramics, exporting to Europe, of course. One is subject to the EU CBAM and the other one to the UK CBAM. And we've been doing work for them for decarbonization. There is a limit beyond which the technologies allow decarbonization, and they may not be able to meet the caps that already been achieved in Europe, because the way the CBAM cap is put in Europe is that they see the 10 most efficient companies in Europe, and they see how much emission reductions they've achieved, and they take the average, then it becomes the cap. So it's really the benchmark is so high. So for companies invested here already with such heavy technology, to be able to shift to the levels of efficiency that has already been achieved in advanced technologies in Europe is quite a challenge. So there should be, especially that the cost of capital right now is extremely high in Egypt and also internationally. So, you know, how to incentivize the carbon markets in Egypt, the voluntary carbon markets in Egypt? I think one way is to actually negotiate somehow with the European Union and with the UK a quota or an allowance or some transitional mechanism that will give access to the voluntary carbon markets to be used, in the Egyptian carbon market to be used to offset emissions when exporting under the CBAM scheme. I think MRV in that sense would be quite important, because then you would probably, the condition would be to prove that the companies have done the maximum possible to decarbonize on their own, and then the remaining part could be accessed through the carbon markets. So that's the first one. If we can achieve that, that's definitely a fantastic opportunity to direct a lot of investment towards decarbonization in general in the economy. So the leakage issue might not be 100% solved, but then it would be addressed somewhere else in the economy by lowering the emissions overall. The second part is obviously access to finance, access to the carbon markets here. Is an incentive in itself. I think the pioneering work that has been done by the Financial Regulatory Authority, this is quite outstanding in setting up this voluntary carbon market. They've done wonderful work. I think that provides opportunities for companies to access finance through issuing carbon credits on now, the challenge in the carbon market, number one challenge globally, is integrity. Integrity and credibility of the carbon credits is the number one challenge in any voluntary carbon market. And there are ways to resolve it. Most important one is MRV. So we're trying to work with the company, with our clients, who will be issuing carbon credits. Some of them are interested in selling locally, and some of them are interested in selling internationally or directly to off-takers abroad. But we will in both cases, we need to set them up with MRVs to make sure that there is transparency in their work throughout the year, and that the verification process at the end of the year is easy and reliable and credible to access finance through voluntary carbon market. I think these are my 2 points. One is actually somehow take a good negotiating position with the EU and the UK so far to discuss access to voluntary carbon markets under CBAM. And the second is to push companies and help companies to install, put in place solid MRVs. Perhaps one more idea as well. Actually, regarding what happened in COP29 in Article 6.4, and the bank is working on that, helping Egypt implement or put in place mechanisms or framework for implementation of Article 6. There is an idea which has been floating around, and I like it very much. is actually which will encourage the carbon markets and the compliance market as well, is to, and it's happening in other countries around the world. I mean, in Asia and in Africa, it's already a couple of countries that have utilized this mechanism. That mechanism basically allows that government, the Ministry of Environment in this case, outsources the setting up of the framework to international programs such as Gold Standard and Vera and others that have they have the know-how basically for setting up a registry, having MRVs. So to encourage the work in the carbon market and to merge both the voluntary and the compliance, which would be possible in that case, I think that should be considered seriously. And I advise the bank to look into this. I think you are already examining this in discussion with the government, and that will be a fantastic breakthrough in pushing forward the local carbon markets.
So if I could just follow up with the one additional question there, which is how can evidence-based approaches and specifically scientific data, how can these two things support the governmental regulatory frameworks in strengthening the voluntary carbon market in Egypt? So any thoughts on evidence-based approaches or scientific data as tools to strengthen the VCM?
It's MRV. The answer is MRV. I mean, I don't want to sound critical of my clients, but we have a data organization of data related to carbon credits and carbon decarbonization is not something that has been practiced for long. So we are struggling with companies to find the data points that are necessary to set up MRVs. And the data needs to be organized within the company in a fashion which is compliant to the methodologies and the standards set by international organizations that do so. So to actually, the evidence part is easy to, but provided you find the data. We have to look within the company to see where is this data and where is the proof that backs up the data points that are collected to be able to report to an MRV in a proper way, in a credible way, so that when audits are happening and when there verifications or validations even taking place, it's not a difficult job to do. So the more work on this MRV concept with businesses, with private sector companies, to help them organize. We are doing this somehow, but it's a tough job. We need help to push and capacity building in the companies, in the private sector, to allow them to set up strong MRV solutions for them.
Wonderful. Certainly, we need data in this business, no doubt. So I want to build on this point and move to Dr. Bayoumi. Because the UNDP plays a really important role in supporting the development of these very MRVs, monitoring, reporting, and verification tools, and does this for climate action in various countries, including Egypt. And so I have a couple of questions. The first is, how can data-driven monitoring, reporting, and verification systems improve the transparency and accountability of carbon credits in Egypt? I think that very much transitions from the previous speaker. So go ahead and tackle that one first, if you would.
Yeah, I think that the issue of MRV was covered by the distinguished panelists. Definitely MRV is a very strong tool in monitoring and guiding climate actions, in particular for mitigation actions. We are honored that we're working with the AFD from the government of France, on a project supporting the Ministry of Environment to develop a national MRV system, taking into consideration the work that the World Bank is doing on 3 sectors, but the other one is going to be a national system. We're contracting the same consulting firm assisting, in the MRV, and together with the colleagues in the Ministry of Environment that I see in the room over here, they are coordinating how this is going to be integrated into one national system. Going to the level of companies, that the second stage is very important, as Mr. Sharif has mentioned. This is extremely important. in order for tracking, the greenhouse gas emission reductions. This is an important tool for reporting on the NDC set targets. In the BTR reports, Egypt has just submitted the first BTR report a couple of months ago, and this will continue. There is another report that has to be submitted in 2026, and definitely MRV is going to form the important pillar in this respect. Obviously, MRV is going to be important if there's going to be a decision about selling carbon credits at certain stage. It's not a secret that there's a split in opinion at the national and international level about selling carbon credit and trading carbon credits. So as long as this is going to be resolved, definitely MRV system is going to be a supportive tool in this respect. At the UNDP, we are trying to develop a project actually to support MRVs and supporting small-scale climate change mitigation actions to sell their carbon credits in voluntary carbon markets. Usually, the small-scale actions are forgotten about. They are not seen in the big game, between decarbonization of industry and all of the other factors, shading up on that. We are talking about individuals or small companies or factories that are installing rooftop PV panels or farmers that are doing climate change mitigation action in their field. There is no chance without international support or international organization support that they can register their projects and get some reward for the activities that they are doing that can really improve the financial feasibility of this intervention and lead to upscaling of these small-scale activities, which I'm a believer in. The small-scale activities can, at a certain stage, with the combined effect, the compilation of these efforts, can lead to something as big as we see with one big project. And we'll see this very soon, hopefully, in Egypt, with the work that we're doing. So this is activities that we are doing in this respect. On the MRV on mitigation. The MRV on adaptation is a different story. There is an M&E system that has to monitor the investments and actions in climate change adaptation and see if these actions are leading to the right track on adapting the sectors, or there is a need to adjust, the spending or the implementation of the projects. We are working also with the French-funded project on the development of the M&E system, and I can see in the room colleagues here from FAO and UNESCO sister organizations that are. FAO is working on the agriculture sector with the Ministry of Agriculture, but I can see Dr. Fahim in the room, and UNESCO sitting in the room working with the Ministry of Water Resources and Irrigation on the M&E sector, M&E system for the water sector. And again, through the French-funded project, we are developing the national MRV adaptation based on this M&E framework that is being currently developed. As I mentioned, it will have a different purpose to adjust, and inform about the status of adaptation in Egypt. But as Mr. Sharif has mentioned, Bardo, there could be opportunities, mitigation opportunities coming out of this adaptation projects as a byproduct. There are some. It's not that easy and straightforward like we are talking about the clear mitigation actions, but there are opportunities that can arise out of this monitoring and evaluation facilities. Yeah.
Thank you. The next question turns a bit more to adaptation, since the UNDP, as you just briefly touched on, has been supporting Egypt in its national adaptation plan. So I'd just like to ask, how does the UNDP integrate data and evidence into those climate resilience strategies in the plan? And more specifically, how can HAPIE's work try and contribute to or enhance these specific efforts?
Speaking about adaptation is usually not that easy. As I mentioned at the beginning, for mitigation, technologies have advanced over the last 10, 15 years amazingly, and it makes the story easy for us as a UNDP. As I mentioned at the beginning, we are just about selecting suitable technologies, financially, technically, and socially, to be adapted in Egypt. And as I mentioned, we have success stories for the rooftop PV systems, for the market transformation to LED. I'm glad that Ms. Laila Hosni is here. She was one of the champions, worked with us, on efficient lighting system with a different hat than the one she has right now. So the story is much easier in mitigation. Adaptation, the story is very complicated. Yes, we are supporting the Ministry of Environment in the development of the National Adaptation Plan. And when it comes to what is the actions, it's extremely difficult. It's extremely difficult. We can put things on the paper, but when it comes to implementation, who's going to finance and what is the generated revenue out of that, and I'm trying to invest in order to protect something that's existing right now. The story is really tricky. And that's why in the UNDP we are trying now to have another approach, learning from what had happened in climate change mitigation. We believe now that adaptation has to be driven by technology advancement right now. As we have heard from the World Bank, the challenges that face Egypt, in agriculture and water sector, in our opinion right now, it's going to be a technological solution that can provide alternative water resource in a cost-effective manner vis-a-vis the expensive resources that we have right now. How this can happen? Technology of alternative water resources has to move ahead with the support of the international community, like the international community has done with climate change mitigation. When they decided, they were able to do. Why not? We don't give this attention as well to climate change adaptation technologies, alternative water resources, sustainable agriculture system. The technologies are available. They are quite expensive. They are not cost-effective. Let's make it be cost-effective. Is this science fiction? It can happen, and we have now examples of desalination for irrigation technologies that has been widely used now in Spain, and this has been transferred in Morocco, and in UNDP we are trying to develop a project to see how this can adapt it to other countries. But again, it needs a collective international community support in this respect. One country is not going to be able to work on that. So this is what we're trying to develop right now in adaptation. I mean, as I mentioned, the M&E is going to be part of it. Early warning system is going to be an important part of a NAP project, the National Adaptation Plan. We don't see, a fast-track action for mitigating or reducing the economic and unfortunately human losses due to climate change, except by early warning system. This is the fastest mechanism. We are at the UNDP. We are working now with the Cabinet of Ministers of the development of a national early warning system that will cut across the different vulnerable sectors in order, as I said, to mitigate these actions. So these are the efforts surrounding climate change adaptation, and including searching for some of the techniques. We have invested like 7 years with the Ministry of Water Resources and Irrigation and Shore Protection Authority to try to define a low-cost technique for protection of the low-lying lands in the Nile Delta from sea level rise. It took us 7 years, and now I'm glad to see that this technique has been expanding now in the Nile Delta, stretch over like 70 kilometers of the Nile Delta coast. It's not the end of the story. We have to find another technique, and we don't have time actually to waste again another 7-8 years. Searching for other techniques, and this shows the importance of the collective international community decisions and support. In order to define this type of adaptation techniques. Once we reach these techniques, I believe that our center here is going to have an important role in assessing the social acceptability of these systems and the financial acceptability, feasibility, in order to see the potential of replication and upscaling. This is always going to be an important role for research centers to assess the potential for upscaling and expanding. This either for mitigation with all the challenges that we have and driving forces that we have heard about from the panelists, and for adaptation and trying to save what we have in hand right now, and trying to protect from devastating climate impacts that we all see, in the different sectors right now. We're not talking about something that's going to happen after 100 years or 50 years, as we always speak. The farmers working in Egypt and the fishermen community, they can feel the fire, coming from extreme weather events right now, and the interventions has to be extremely fast. And as I said, research centers can play a big role in this respect in assessing and supporting decision making for replication and upscaling.
Yeah, 1 minute. Go ahead. It's yours.
Thank you. Fantastic. I love the words that on adaptation. The problem with adaptation, the reason why technologies in mitigation are way ahead is obviously there is a business case for mitigation which was created by the carbon markets. Absolutely very straightforward. So I think the answer for the business case for adaptation comes, and maybe that's a very important area of research, comes in the figures that you mentioned, Laurence, in the cost, the economic cost of air pollution, for example, in terms of health. This creates burdens on the public budget and the fiscal burdens on the budget. Same thing with also the cost of losses in farming and so on. This is a serious economic. So the research of how can you make a business case for adaptation through policy interventions that will be corresponding to the economic loss that's happening, and that perhaps, God forbid, anybody, I don't like to talk about tax breaks or any fiscal incentives for that. Or maybe that's the business case actually for adaptation, is that if you are able to, if you can connect the investment in adaptation measures to the reduction of the burden on the budget, then you deserve some financial support from the government to be able to get there and to invest in technologies and to invest in adaptation, because it's extremely urgent. I mean, the losses, and for example, in the last summer, with the extreme heat, the damage to some crops were extremely high. We lost 30% of the mangoes and the dates, and 30% of the output was damaged, was completely gone in a number of important products, some of which we export actually. So these are very serious negative impact on the economy that if maybe the Impact Lab can look into this, how can we actually create a business case for adaptation by measuring the negative impact that the lack of investment in adaptation is actually causing on the economy and the welfare of people, like you mentioned. The farmers are suffering from that.
Thank you so much for that. Kind of reminds me of some of my own work on flood-tolerant seeds in India, where there very much is a business case for small farmers to adopt seeds that are more tolerant to those extremes because it protects their crop in the event of very bad weather. And some experimental research that we did several years ago showed that very thing and did contribute evidence towards investments in upscaling that innovation, which very much is an adaptation technology. So we are right at 1:10. We're going to have one more opportunity to go back around, and I think there's good opportunities to sort of touch on what other people said. But before we do that, I want to spend about 15 minutes with a Q&A session and open up to the audience for Q&A. And then after that, we'll give each panelist about a minute or so to go back through. So I think what I'd like to do is just collect a few questions first, and then give the relevant panelists an opportunity to respond. And I think there are probably microphones around somewhere. Are there microphones? Okay, we're working on getting those. So right here in the middle. If you could first just introduce yourself and then go ahead. The mic might not be on. You might need to get the green light on the mic and then you're good.
اهلا وسهلا بحضراتكم. انا بس هتكلم بالعربي عشان ناخد حريه اكتر. انا اسمي محمد سليمان, founder of NEATH. NEATH is a temple of bees and honey. احنا في نيس شغالين زي ما ذكر معالي الاستاذ شريف الديواني, شغالين على نحل عسل المنجروف. واحنا طبعا انا شفت الفريق بتاع حضرتك في حماطه في جنوب مرسى علم. انا في مرسى علم من 2019 شغال على عسل منجروف مصر الحمد لله أنا حابب أبشر حضرتك إن إحنا محققين نتائج الحمد لله حتى الآن أعتقد إني راضي عنها. وإحنا كمان السنة دي ربنا أكرمنا وكنا أخذنا المركز الأول على مستوى الجمهورية في المبادرة الوطنية للمشروعات الخضراء من ضمن المشروعات المتغير المناخ ودعم المرأة. وإحنا طبعا الفريق كله 100% سيدات اللي بيقوموا بإنتاج العسل ضمن المنجروف، وعندنا تجربة كبيرة في الحتة دي. وطبعا حضراتكم في البداية تحدثتوا عن الداتا والمعلومات، وأعتقد إن في ظني إن ده الكنز الحقيقي للأمم، إن يكون عندهم داتا ونتائج أبحاث. فأنا طبعا بأحيي حضرتك على المجهود المبذول في جنوب البحر الأحمر، لأني أعلم مدى مشقة العمل في جنوب البحر الأحمر وحضرتك تعلم ذلك. وأتمنى طبعا أن يكون في تعاون بيننا وبين الMGM. احنا فيما يتعلق بالمنجروف كمان انا حابه ابشر حضرتك ان احنا اخذنا موافقه مبدئيه من محافظه البحر الاحمر لانشاء منجروف هاني كامب علشان نقدر نوعي الناس ونبين للعالم كله قد ايه ان احنا كمان قادرين نستوعب ان احنا ننقل تجربه حقيقيه للاهتمام بالمنجروف في مصر. يعني الكلام في الموضوع كتير جدا، انا مش عايز اخد وقت زملاتي، لكن على سبيل التكيف فاحنا من خلال تواجدنا مع الناس كنا دايما بنلاحظ ان المنطقه في حماطه خاصه في فصل الصيف درجه الحراره فيها منخفضه عن باقي المنطقه في البحر الاحمر من 3 ل 5 درجات، وده تم رصده طبعا ومصورينه. فانا بدعو الجميع طبعا لتضافر الجهود لدعم المنجروف في مصر، لان الحقيقه ان القطاع ده في مصر محتاج دعم كبير جدا. لو قدرنا نعمل ده هنقدر نسيطر على التحديات البيئيه اللي بتواجه منطقه جنوب البحر الاحمر نتيجه لتغير المناخ وارتفاع درجات الحراره. وطبعا بأتمنى ان الجامعه الامريكيه تقدر تساعدنا وتشاركنا في الموضوع ده، لان احنا عندنا خطه كبيره جدا للانتشار جنوبا اكتر في منطقه البحر الاحمر. ده على صعيد الموضوع الاول. على صعيد الموضوع الثاني تحدث معالي الدكتور محمد بيومي عن التكيف، ان الUNDP بتدير مشروع للنحل والتكيف. أنا بشرف إني أدير مشروع فتيات النحل المدعوم من الUNDP والجيف في الفيوم سعادتك. وأنا يعني أعتقد إن المعلومات وصلت حضرتك إن إحنا الحمد لله من شهر 9 شغالين كويس جدا على إن إحنا نقدر نوفر داتا من المزارعين وصغار المزارعين على أهم التحديات اللي بتواجههم، خاصة في المشاكل المتعلقة بالنحل بالنخل والمانجا زي ما حضرتك ذكرت، لأن الفيوم أحد المحافظات المنتجة للمحصولين.
ده برنامج المنحة الصغيرة مش كده؟
برنامج المنحة الصغيرة، تمام. واحنا الحمد لله بدأنا المجموعة الأولى من تدريب فتيات النحل. احنا المشروع للناس اللي بتعرفش بيستهدف تدريب 1000 فتاة على مهن متعلقة بنحل العسل، ومنهم 100 نحالة. بدأنا من حوالي شهر ونص المجموعة الأولى من التدريب السيدات، والحمد لله واصلين لمستوى كويس جدا من تدريب السيدات ومدى تجاوب كبير جدا من سيدات الفيوم. حابب اشكر حضراتكم وبتمنى من سعادتك مزيد من الدعم طبعا، وحضرتك تزورنا وتشرفنا هناك في الفيوم. واهلا وسهلا بحضراتكم وشكرا جزيلا.
chair's prerogative here and say thank you. Those were really valuable insights. There was one that in the Arabic translation that I got, which I almost want to put on the wall of my office, which says data were the main treasure. And I love that statement. But I want to collect a few more questions.
Yes, we have another question here.
Hello, so my name is Iman Wahbi, and among the different hats, I'm an angel investor. So in climate tech and nature-based solutions. So just following up on this question, I think we're seeing here is speaking about innovation, and 60% of this country actually are young people. So we're seeing a lot of innovation, and we're seeing a lot of young leaders leading on climate solutions, adaptation, mitigation. So I think the key maybe like enabling, how to support the enabling environment, how to support green skills. We cannot continue speaking about green economy without actually investing in green skills and supporting the overall enabling economy. For instance, if an MBS, like founder of a nature-based solution, will go to the bank, will they be able to access finance? So I think there's a whole enabling environment support here that's needed from the different partners. Thanks a lot.
So there was a question here at the very beginning that I want to acknowledge that I did. So please, can we bring a mic up here to in the second row? There we go.
Thank you so much for giving me the floor. I'm Fatma Abu Zaid. I'm here on behalf of Dr. Abdel Hakim El-Waer, FAO Regional Director for Near East and North Africa region. I'm very happy and glad to be here and listen to distinguished guests and also see the reflection from colleagues on the floor. Indeed, this is important issue to work on adaptation in Egypt. For your Excellency, your Counselor, I wish that you explain to us how you are maneuvering the negotiation from the mitigation-driven negotiation and very, very hectic work on mitigation and to work on adaptation for Egypt and other developing countries. And also I have a reflection on what Dr. Sharif mentioned, that we have an FAO developing some evidence on adaptation and feasibility of climate-smart agriculture practices, which include working with farmers and with the specific business solutions to ensure that those climate-smart agriculture practices are economically feasible for investment. And also we are working now for de-risking mechanism and solutions to enable the private sector and companies working on climate action, especially in adaptation options. So we are now working on this, and we will launch very soon, within few days, a report on the climate smart investment in livestock and dairy production in Egypt. And also we are providing a lot of solutions and also mechanisms for private sector to heavily invest in climate action in the dairy production in Egypt. Thank you.
Let's do take a couple more. And then
I just want to nudge the panel regarding political will and the Paris Agreement. We shouldn't talk politics, but it's just something we've been talking, a side talk with Dr. Ham on it. So I just wanted to just nudge you on that one. Thank you.
I'm Mahmoud Fouad, the General Manager for the Quality and Environmental Affairs in the holding company for water and wastewater. I'm very glad to be in this event, and I want to thank all the panelists to explaining and exploring some data that I have had in my experience in the managing water and wastewater services in Egypt. But as you know, the climate affects all the activities in Egypt. One of the most affected, from my point of view, issues is the water or drinking water supply and wastewater also treatment, especially for vulnerable areas in Egypt. The climate change affects both the quantity and the quality of the services. I think we have go through this in the company and through our government, but of course we need more efforts in this area. Also, we need more research and some data evaluation and validation. Also, in our sectors, we process the data of the operational processes, but not correlated directly to the climate change. And this is one of the gaps we seeking when we working about the climate and its impact and so. One of the steps we took in the past is to communicate with our colleagues in Japan in order to find out more collaboration in this issue, and also we seeking this from all of the participants if this is an interesting for anyone from here. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we can collect one more, and oh wow, you're really pushing me hard up here. Driving a tough bargain. Two more.
I have a short question.
Yeah, you're the winner. You're the winner.
And I go directly to the question, just with a small introduction. First of all, I'm Bashir Imam. I'm the chief of the science unit at UNESCO Cairo office. We deal with water, we deal with environment, biosphere, and all of these issues. So all the conversation here was very relevant to what we do. However, my question is, we've heard a lot about big data. We've heard about remote sensing observation from ESA, NASA, and other space agencies. We've heard a lot about the government of Egypt issues with respect to integrating data and the policy issues. We also heard about the open data from our colleagues in the World Bank. We heard also about the need for data from the private sector. And of course, we are privileged and honored to be working with our sister agencies, UNDP as well as FAO, on the Scala project, which is developing the thing. The question from my point of view is, as we heard about all of these, that I would really like to hear the perspective from the distinguished panelists about, are we really preparing the next generation for the issue with adaptation, to do the adaptation work, to work with the adaptation technology, to deal with big data, to deal with AI, and with 4 or 5 or 6 years education? Couldn't a lot of what we want to do be done in a much rapid way through some focused technical vocational education on big data, on AI, on all of these things? In my opinion, if I want to say where I'm coming from, that is that in fact with doing that, you are able to immediately retrain people. When you have a short training certificate, when you have highly focused, intensive training programs. And I think there is also a role for the private sector to help with that, because the private sector will, in that case, could be the place where we have internship, where we have practicum, where we have all of these issues worked on that. And thank you very much for giving me the chance to ask this question.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I'm going to speak in Arabic. دكتور محمد علي فهيم، رئيس مركز معلومات تغير مناخ بوزارة الزراعة. أنا أتكلم كوني farmer, not just a professor or even a director of climate change information center. مزارع، فلاح. ما يحدث الآن في البيئة الزراعية المصرية لم يحدث في تاريخ هذه البيئة بسبب فقط تغير المناخ. تغير المناخ أصبحت قضية كارثية بمعنى الكلمة. وانا بتبسط جدا ان الاقي حدث مهم اطلاق هاب، وبذكر طبعا الدكتوره ريهام الادفانسد بوليسي انوفيشن. بس انا تهيالي الادفانسد بوليسي انوفيشن يحتاج وفي اسرع وقت الامبلمنتيشن. بنتكلم كتير على النظريات ونتكلم كتير على البوليسي وعلى الدراسات وعلى وبقينا فترات طويله، والبنك الدولي كان ليه دراسه مهمه جدا السي سي دي ار على مستوى التغيرات المناخية في مصر. نحتاج فوراً إلى الانتقال وبصورة عاجلة جداً إلى التطبيق، إن إحنا فعلياً نعمل ما يسمى بتوطين التكنولوجيا التي من شأنها أنها تتأقلم، يخلي الزرع بتاعنا يتأقلم مع تغير المناخ. تغير المناخ كما قال السيد رئيس الجمهورية في كل خطاباته الرسمية، تغير المناخ في مصر هي قضية وجودية، مش في الولايات المتحدة ولا في وسط أوروبا. تغير المناخ الآن من النهارده 4 أيام وسنرى في مصر 4 فصول في أسبوع واحد. سيحدث انخفاض كبير في درجات الحرارة بداية من يوم السبت، ثم يحدث زيادة في سرعات الرياح. هتعمل إيه؟ هتعمل مشكلة كبيرة جدا في الزراعات. ولعل بعض المتحدثين الأفاضل تكلم على خسارة 1,000,000 طن مانجا في 2019 وخسارة مئات الآلاف من الأطنان من الزيتون في خلال 6-7 سنوات الماضية، وخسرنا في القمح ومحصول استراتيجي مهم في 2018 ما يزيد عن 20 أو 25% من الإنتاج القومي. إذن تغير المناخ نقطة ومن أول السطر. تغير المناخ في مصر يحتاج إلى تكاتف كل هذه الجهات المحترمة الموجودة UNDP فاو والجامعة الأمريكية والجيبال عشان نوصل للإمبلمنتيشن أوف إكزيست بوليسي. موجود البوليسي، محتاج إن إحنا نوطن تطبيقها، لأن تغير المناخ لن يصمت كثيرا، ممكن نوصل لمراحل أصعب من المراحل الموجودة عندنا. دي يعني الرسالة اللي أنا عاوز أوصلها لحضراتكم، وشكرا جزيلا.
Dr. Him.
Can I have one more reflection, Kyle?
Yes, you can.
Thank you very much. How kind you are. So mine actually, it's a reflection rather than a question. What we observe from, thank you very much for the insightful panel and the information that you spread on different climate change aspects. But my question related to the MRV system. What we have heard from Council Taghreed, that there is an appetite to set the MRV system for Egypt. And also there are efforts from the UNDP, World Bank, and on the front of the private sector as well. Sharif mentioned that he's helping the firms to set their MRVs to be aligned with the international standards. So my reflection here, how we can join forces and align in order to be able to benefit from each other based on practices and challenges. Thank you.
Thank you. So I am going to make an executive decision to merge the closing remarks with answers to those questions for however the panelists see fit, if that's okay. I'd like to give each of you an opportunity to speak for a minute or so on closing remarks, and also to try and integrate answers to the questions that you see most relevant to yourselves in those answers. I heard a lot about young people and education. So if you could speak a little bit about climate change education, that would be wonderful. A little bit about negotiation on adaptation and mitigation and how to sort of maneuver that. That would be great. And then, of course, the discussions about political will. I'm going to push that discussion down to my left, and I'm going to start with for these closing remarks with you, Mr. Sharif.
I agree. I mean, it's extremely stimulating event. So much very rich discussion. I fully agree. I learned a lot. I think I will pick up on one thing that to be on a happy note, so to speak, to actually refer to HAPIE lab. I like to pick up on the satellite that was mentioned, satellite technology, which is extremely relevant for nature-based solution in Egypt, such as the one done in mangroves and others in seagrass. Seagrass requires satellite technology to be actually verified and to have MRVs working correctly. So some work by HAPIE to actually proof of concept in the application of satellite imagery in some of the projects that are being implemented currently, and maybe future projects. I know of someone who's working on seagrass in the Red Sea as well, in the same area that the gentleman was working on the honey mangrove. So that's my reflection on that, which connects in a way to what you are requesting can be done. On the political will, I think, if I may just quickly comment, I think, I mean, the country is burdened by so many different challenges. I think if we had a slightly quieter region, the political will on climate change, climate action rather, would rise up a little bit in the list of priorities. But there is not enough evidence, unfortunately, right now, that reflects what the gentleman was saying on the existential question related to climate action and its impact on the Egyptian economy and the future of next generations. I think if some evidence is more publicized, the awareness on that perhaps some of the political will be consolidated more. There are some, every once in a while, there's some burst of political push, but then it's diluted compared to other serious existential problems as well that the country faces. So it is not an easy choice to make. That's my reflection on the political will here.
Thank you. Let's now go to Dr. Bayoumi.
Thank you very much. I will start, with my discussion on the political will for Paris Agreement. And I will allow me, I'm going to tell you my personal point of view in this respect, my personal perception. As a practitioner working in this field, for some time when Paris Agreement was signed and there was big pressure for countries, developed and developing countries, to set the targets for reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. We're talking about a 20-30%, reduction in greenhouse gas emissions per country. To me, I didn't take it serious, to be honest with you. I felt, that this is a political maneuver. And the world leaders are meeting every year, in the COP series of the COP meetings. What's happening? Why these people are wasting their time in something that's not leading to anything at the end? But actually, in a very short while afterwards, I started to realize that there was something big happening, and there is a big investment in this area, in particular for climate change mitigation. We have seen Europe, pushing for the feed-in tariff program that came early 2000s, and this was a breakthrough for the development of the technologies. And what had happened, as a practitioner, I can see the development in the technology was beyond the expectation of anyone working in this field. To give you just an example, the solar energy was considered the technology of the rich countries 10 years ago. Today, generating electricity from solar panel is the technology of the poor countries. Africa, which doesn't have electricity, is not going to have hope to get electricity except through this technology. And this happened only in 10 years. We have seen a drop in the prices of solar panels by 90% only in 10 years. And it didn't come by chance, it didn't come accident. This became of the series of the COP and the world leaders that were meeting, and the mobilization of policies and initiatives that were taking place. When the international community had the will, we were able to develop a business case for investment in renewable energy that is the motivator now for the change. And now, from between Paris and today, we see countries speaking about carbon neutrality. This was not possible in 2015 when Paris Agreement was signed. And now, because I became a believer in the impact of technology, and we're hearing about green hydrogen, electric cars, and lots of other technologies, it's a competition. It's open competition between private sector companies and the technologies, to show themselves, if they are able to contribute and develop a business case. This is the most important part of it, to develop a business case attractive for private sector investment. And I'm a believer now that carbon neutrality is not very far, vis-a-vis my beliefs of the Paris Agreement. So there is a political will globally, irrespective of the ups and downs that we see, from time to time at the political level. The train has moved, and it is going into the right direction. It all depends on the speed. Sometimes it goes faster, and sometimes it goes slower. Developing countries in Paris, we're arguing you cannot put obligations, for us to reduce carbon, greenhouse gas emissions. Today, it is a business opportunity. The situation is different. Today, climate change mitigation actions are contributing to energy security in many countries. So the story is different. Unfortunately, that didn't happen on the adaptation side. And there was no much political will, to push for adaptations. And this was unfortunately left to developing countries to do it by themselves. We heard from the moderator about the initiatives in India and certain countries that are upscaled, but unfortunately this is most of the time local initiatives. I claim that we have developed something to be seen over here in Egypt for the low-cost techniques for coastal protection, a nature-based solution that's being upscaled in the Nile Delta. But this is very specific to the Nile Delta, and most likely it's not going to be useful for other countries in this context. We are looking for standardized technologies again and techniques for climate change adaptation that can really push the climate change adaptation action like it happened with the mitigation action, and create business opportunities for investment rather than just protecting our assets. Protecting our assets, I'm speaking from a neutral point of view. This burden cannot be taken by the developing countries alone. Why should the developing countries pay an extra money, to protect an assets that they invested a lot in developing, because of a problem that they were not contributing much to? So the solution for this is to find, again, business opportunities in adaptation, which unfortunately you can hardly find in the sector of adaptation. And this is, I believe, should be the focus of the international community in the COP in the coming years. We started to see this in the COP27. Really, Egypt was able to put this in the agenda, and we started to see initiatives for adaptation for the first time through the COP series, and I hope that this will continue and really take the track seriously in order to find solutions in this respect.
Thank you. Councillor Taghareed.
Thank you, and I will build on the very insightful comments of Hamad Bey. Actually, there's no business case for adaptation so far, and the negotiations, the Paris Agreement has turned to be very much mitigation-centric. Not only because it has a business case, but also because it is part of a growing trade war between the key players. And this is very much unfortunate. And we see the implications of this. This resonates in the trade measures that's squeezed by climate tools like the tax and so on. So the challenge that we have right now is that we are tackling issues within the negotiations. And because it is still a party-driven negotiations and processes, but at the same time, the developed countries, the strongest partners, are imposing challenges and issues beyond the negotiations itself. And this is the real challenge that we are having right now, not the negotiations within Paris Agreement, not the political will to strengthen this format, which its credibility is eroding and its attraction is eroding for many developing countries. You should have watched, there was a very small agenda item. It was not even an agenda item on the multilateral trade measures pushed by the key developing countries, including Egypt, in the past COP. And you should have watched the polarization within the room itself, how countries just forgot about Paris Agreement and the UNFCCC and started to attack each other on these measures. And they were enabled because of polarization to include these issues as an agenda item. So there is much distortion within the UNFCCC negotiations right now. Measures taken beyond this. Developing countries started to lose some faith in the process, but still we are committed, all parties are committed, because at the end of the day, it is the only format that we can count on to reach some common goals, at least. I have two more quick remarks, actually about, and pretty much related to the CPAMs and mitigation issues, and pretty much relevant to Egypt in particular. Who's the key loser of the current policies, the CBAMs and others? The data and the evidence-based research found out that the small and medium-sized businesses in Egypt are the main losers, because we found out that the big companies in Egypt are willing and they have the capacity and will to invest in green technologies, and they have undertaken intensive capital measures to change the production processes. While the small and medium-sized companies, they don't have the resources. And all the companies, they said that the key hurdle is the finance. As I said, a country like Egypt can support and escort its business sector as Europe does. So we think that long-term concessional finance is the solution to enable all the business sector in Egypt to transit and to decarbonize over the medium and long term. So finance is essential, but again, the carbon markets is not a source of finance. It is a venue for mitigation, a contribution from developing countries, from the buyers to the mitigation effort. Because all the time we hear from the developed countries that you can count on carbon markets to mobilize finance. But to put Article 6 into perspective, it is a contribution from us to the mitigation effort. So they should be complementary in a way that wouldn't also burden the shoulder of the government with more commitments, especially when it comes to corresponding adjustment and so on. So the issue is very much complicated, and the only solution is the just transition to be true to the principles of the UNFCCC and Paris Agreement as much as we can with our partners, and to continue the very successful partnership with all the development partners here besides me. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Mr. Laurent. It will at lunch.
Thank you, and yes, indeed, this is a super stimulating conversation, and with so much enthusiasm in the room, there is no doubt this will be a happy lab that we are inaugurating today. I will quickly pick up on 2 points. The first is about skills and youth. So no doubt there is a top priority. The world is changing so fast these days that if you're a young person, you start your studies, your university in a certain world, and by the time you finish, it's a different world, and you need to start studying again to adjust to the new world. So that's completely amazing. At the bank, we try and make sure that every single project that we finance has a component on capacity building. And as I mentioned, in the case of the Greater Cairo project, we feel that in many cases, that component is the best investment that the country can do in terms of training and building capacity of its people, especially young people. The second point I wanted to pick up, it has been clear from this conversation that climate adaptation is the utmost priority for Egypt. I like the idea of monetizing the public good benefits of industries and private sector, making a special effort to improve climate resilience. Although it may not be a directly profitable investment, there may be a good case for government to incentivizing those type of measures. So we will take that with us, the idea of adaptation credits to mimic the world of carbon credits.
Wonderful. Mrs. Clémence, I allowed you to kick us off, and so now I'm going to pass it to you for the final words.
Thank you so much. I'm going to echo the sentiments of the panelists. Looking forward to continue the conversation today, but also to remain engaged with MENA and with the HAPIE Lab on your results, your contribution. Also, something I touched on earlier, but also your insights on things that we haven't discussed that much today, but around data systems, data governance, open data. How do we make sure that the world of practitioners and academics is bridged also from that angle? I'm going to try and grapple with the political will question, first by stating that I do not speak for the government of France, only the ambassador does. Doesn't mean that I can shy away from this question, but it explains why I bring the development finance perspective. I think in a world which is increasingly polarized or fragmented, as you mentioned, Councillor, Paris is the only format that we can count on. I think climate multilateralism is still producing results. It's not a given. I think the COP on biodiversity showed that last year, unfortunately, despite also the fact that this is a existential challenge. And so I'll give one example or one outcome from Baku and try to link that to some of the questions in the room, which is the target on climate finance. Going from 100 to 300 billion is not just a mouthpiece. It's it sets norms for a development finance institution like AFD. It holds us to account, changes the scale of what we have to deliver. On behalf of the government of France, in terms of climate finance, AFD represents roughly 50% of France's kind of climate finance reporting. And so to kind of land on how we do it in Egypt with Egyptian partners and answer the question around investing in the enabling environment. About a third of our 4 billion euros roughly invested in Egypt since over the past 15 years has been on climate finance, sustainable finance, SDG-aligned finance. And so making available long-term concessional financing for SMEs, for women-led businesses, for industrial actors also. To first, 15 years ago, around issues of environmental compliance, today around, the challenge of decarbonization. We work with the central bank, with FRA, on the way that they shape regulations and this enabling environment. We've been impressed by how the regulators, over the course of 2 years, in a very challenging macroeconomic environment, have stayed the course. The sustainable finance directives of the central bank are ambitious. They are nudging, pushing the financial, banking and non-banking financial sectors. And so to finish, we have long-term concessional, subsidized financing that are rooted not through AFD, not through the government, but through the financial system. Public and private banks, Egyptian banks that we work with, that have set up windows to support these kind of investments. And I think a big part our conviction at AFD is a big part of the answer to climate action, including adaptation, by the way. We're seeing Egyptian private banks agree to adaptation finance targets with AFD at a scale which was unimaginable 10 years ago. So we think a big part of the conversation is also how do we get financial systems as a whole to align to what has been negotiated in multilateral settings.
Thank you so much. We're only about 18 minutes past. I thought I was doing pretty well for a while, but the inspiring questions and the discussion at the end was totally well worth it because it was really insightful. I feel like I learned a lot sitting here listening to this discussion. So I'd like you to just thank me sorry, not thank me. Join me in thanking the panelists for their effort.
Wow. Thank you. I'd like to thank you, Kyle, for the great moderation and the panelists for such an interesting and insightful discussion. And I have to plug in that we've discussed, I think we've covered carbon credits, vulnerability, adaptation, data, education, TVET education. I think we've and at the same time, we've covered policy. And this is my own plug to reach out. We work on all of these topics. Would love to work with you on this. I think a lot of the discussions and the insights from you have been great and would love to work on these projects with you to know what works and what doesn't and what's cost effective or not. So with that, we can conclude our panels and the day. I'd like to invite Dr. Riham Riz for her closing remarks. Dr. Riham is the director of the Egypt Impact Lab, which HAPIE is part of.
يعني احنا جينا اخر سيشن وهي هتبقى لايت وانا مشفقه عليكم البانelists كانت قويه جدا. انا الكلوزنج ريماركس بتاعتي هتبقى بالانجليزي سوري فور ذس بس ثانك يو فور يعني الساده الحضور شكرا جدا جدا على تلبيه الدعوه وشكرا للسبيكرز. حقيقي النهارده يعني ما كانش هيعدي حلو كده الا بوجودكم. So distinguished guests and esteemed partners, as we all know that Egypt faces complex development and fiscal challenges that demand evidence-based approaches to ensure programs are both cost-effective and impactful on people's lives. This understanding led to the establishment of the Egypt Impact Lab in March 2022, carefully aligned with Egypt's national development goals. Our integration into the National Institute of Governance and Sustainable Development in 2024 marked a significant milestone, transforming the Egypt Impact Lab staff from being an external consultant to being an embedded government staff enabling deeper collaboration and lasting impact. With a focus on Egypt's national priorities in social protection, family development, and employment policies, which are the main thematic research areas of the Egypt Impact Lab, we are proud to launch our environmental and climate change initiatives through HAPIE. Our core mission is focusing on generating evidence on priority themes, building capacity to use this evidence, and strengthening the knowledge ecosystem. Over the past 3 years, and I'm really very proud of this, to be communicated to the audience that the Egypt Impact Lab has achieved remarkable progress. We do have now 11 ongoing research projects across 12 governorates, 8 from the Egypt Impact Lab and 3 from HAPIE, reaching 36,129 project participants. We have built capacity by training 240 professionals from government agencies, NGOs, UN bodies, and international organizations, while fostering 30 active partnerships and engaging 28 researchers from prestigious universities. HAPIE represents our commitment to climate adaptation, paving the way for innovative, evidence-based solutions to address Egypt's pressing air and water challenges. Its vision is to create collaborative platforms driven by government priorities to generate impactful environmental programs and policies. Today's insightful panel discussion highlighted the strengths of our partnerships with government entities, international development organizations, and the private sector. Their expertise and commitment are invaluable in translating Egypt's most pressing environmental challenges into actionable roadmaps that drive real, measurable impact. Our research priorities under HAPIE target 4 key environmental challenges: stimulating Egypt's voluntary carbon markets to drive climate-smart investments, equipping farmers with data-driven practices for climate-resilient agriculture, enhancing water quality management for better health outcomes, advancing waste management systems to support circular economy solutions. I would like to take a moment and invite Egypt government champions, climate leaders, and policymakers to collaborate with us in designing impactful evaluations that translate into meaningful policy actions. Together, we can bridge the gap between the research and implementation, strengthening Egypt's climate resilience. And this is the most dearest part of my speech to my heart. I would love to express my deepest gratitude to Her Excellency, Dr. Rania Al-Mashat, the Minister of Planning, Economic Development, and International Cooperation for her continuous support and endorsement, Dr. Sharifa Sharif, the Executive Director of National Institute for Governance and Sustainable Development, the AUC, the JPAL leadership, Community Jameel, and Sawiris Foundation for Social Development for their steadfast support. To our esteemed panelists and distinguished guests, your insights and collaboration today are invaluable. Last but not least, special recognition goes to the JPAL MENA team, our senior management, environment team, communications team, Egypt Impact Lab team, and finance and operation teams whose dedication and hard work have made this launch possible. And a special note of appreciation to our former colleague Hiba Sahn, who first envisioned and championed HAPIE. Her early dedication set the foundation for what we celebrate today. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rihim. Now I'd like to invite Dr. Sharifa Sharif for her closing remarks.
Thank you. Incredible panel. The discussion has to go on. This is not the end. Of course, colleagues and distinguished guests, as we come to the close of today's event, I would like to take a moment to sincerely thank each of you for your invaluable participation and contributions through also with the Q&A that was done. Your presence today is powerful. It's a powerful proof of collective commitment we all share addressing Egypt's most urgent climate change challenge through evidence-based solutions. And of course, doing this, it has to be done collectively. Aligning the National Institute for Governance and Sustainable Development's mandate, I think we saw it all today that it's directly linked to good governance practices. When we talk about climate change, when we talk about what we were talking about today, evidence-based solutions, and of course, working with governments and working collectively, this has to be done through good governance practices. Of course, the Egypt Impact Lab, headed by Dr. Hem and an incredible team, we have to thank Sawiris Foundations for its support, Community Jameel, and of course AUC. And I stand before you today as a proud AUCian also. And of course, the Egypt Impact Lab is a government-embedded lab that's been with us in the National Institute since 2022. So in closing, I'm confident that working together collectively, we could strengthen Egypt's path towards a resilient, sustainable future. Working together to ensure that actions and climate action is done to benefit this generation and generations to come. Thank you for being with us today, and I hope we continue with your support in several of the, of course, projects that we want to do together. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Sharifa. Not so fast. Before I let you go, I have to end with a call to action. Please reach out to any of the team members. I think we have 4 amazing ladies working with us on the sector, whether on adaptation, water solutions, on agriculture, on carbon solutions, on data and how to use it. We want to be your arm, your research arm in whatever we do in order to have policies that work. So this is, in the end, our job is to mobilize these solutions by supporting you through capacity building or through research or through policy projects that help you do your job well and to help all of the communities that we serve in the end. Thank you so much for being here and for joining us, and thank you to the panelists and the speakers and the team, of course, that have been working intensively to make this happen. And I'll let you go. We're having lunch outside. Thank you, everyone. Can we take a picture just with the panelists? Yeah. If I can ask the leadership and the panelists to take one picture before you go. One picture on the stage, please.